Welcome to the Tougie is very tired video of the week. Let's be honest, it's more like the Tougie's tired video of the day, because in most of my videos I am quite tired. But anyway, hi, how are you? As you'll know by the title, this is the video that I've been promising for a while. We had this video last year. Here it is again, the custom roster editing recap video, where I am going to go through everything that I have done to update this roster and to get it to a point where I feel as though it's good, it's accurate, and it'll make franchise mode a lot more entertaining for me and hopefully for you. Now, I'm going to say this right off the top, and I hope you're listening. All right, let's not be sarcastic dicks here in the comments. Just straight up. This video, these rosters, these overalls, these potentials, at the end of the day, they are just my opinion. I will talk about the process that I go through in deciding the overall and potential, particularly for NHL players. If you agree with that process, cool. If you disagree with that process, again, at the end of the day, that process is just me taking a look at stats and then deciding, okay, how do I want to apply that within the game? You don't have to agree with it, all right? At the end of the day, it's just an arbitrary number that is assigned to a computer-generated AI player, all right? It's not a big deal. Anyway, with that out of the way, I can't wait for someone to be like, what? That guy's an 84, Tougie, you're insane. Happens every time. Happened last year. Happened on stream when I did test runs for this. I expect in the comments to literally quote me with what I just said right there. Anyway, dozens and dozens and dozens, perhaps, of hours have been put into updating these rosters. So let's get to it. The first thing I'm going to do is explain to you the process in the order of which I personally choose to update said things, and I do start off with the free agent list. Obviously, my free agent list currently will be quite different than what yours will look like with the most recent EA roster update. Here is what I do. First thing, you take a look at the free agent list. You go to eliteprospects.com, keep that site open, bookmark it, whatever. You're going to be on it a lot if you follow the steps that I do here. You go to Elite Prospects and you look up every single player. Iginla, like, Tootin, everybody. And you see who is retired, perhaps. Someone like Dennis Weidman, who is listed as retired under Elite Prospects. And from there, you see who's retired. You see who is overseas, perhaps in the KHL. And you can decide whether or not you want to remove those players or not. And you do just that. When I say remove, what you're going to want to do is, say Jarome Iginla's in the KHL, what you're going to want to do is bring those players over to the international teams. Any player you put on an international team does not show up in franchise modes. For example, Jared Cowan, Weidman, Schultz, Scuderi, Joe Vitale. These are all players that I removed from the free agent list. Chris Neal, John Michael Lyles, Mike Brown. You get the point. The second thing you're going to want to do to clean it up a little bit is you're going to want to drop the overall of certain players like Jarome Iginla, Brooks Laich. Jarome Iginla, I think by default, is still a 77 to a 78 overall, which makes him a guaranteed signing, which he is not. To edit any player on the free agent list, unfortunately, you are going to have to move them over to an AHL team. I just typically move them over to Bakersfield. You select Jarome Iginla, you hit finish. Free agency is the key, though. Don't hit Edmonton. Keep current affiliation works as well because he is technically a free agent. Just hit free agency, back out. You go over to edit player. You go to Bakersfield. You change that overall to whatever the hell you want to change it to. And there you go. It's good to go. It's perfect. You can clean up the free agent list. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. The second step, remember how I told you to keep Elite Prospects open? Well, that is because each of the 31 NHL teams happen to have a roster page. On said roster page, there is the blue kind of nav bar that says one of the options is depth chart. You're going to want to click on that, and this is very important because what you are going to do is you are going to look through that entire depth chart, and you are going to see what players are missing. And by missing, I mean players that are over in the KHL, NCAA guys, basically players that EA don't have the rights to put into their game. Which leads you to the create player screen, in which case, holy shit, have I added a whole lot of players. I will go over this entire list in a moment. You can tell by the nav bar, it's quite a few players here, right? So keep that in mind. It's tedious for sure. You can pick and choose. You don't have to add every missing player. You can just go with the bigger names like an Adam Gaudette, for example. But that is step number 2, is to go through the depth chart for all 31 NHL teams and to see what players are missing. Then you add them into the game. Step number 3, on Elite Prospects, there is a Draft Center tab at the top. You are going to click on Draft Center. You are going to take a look. There are options for the 2018, 2019, and 2020 draft. You are going to take a look at each section, and you're going to find the prospects that are projected to be higher picks in the upcoming draft, and whether or not you have to add them into the game. Case in point with someone like a Brady Tkachuk, for example, or a Bodie Wild, whether or not you have to add them into the game. Or one thing you'll notice, you might have noticed already, in fact, is that EA tends to underrate a lot of guys coming out of the upcoming drafts, including guys like Kirby Dach and Peyton Krebs. So the good thing, or the ideal thing that you're going to want to do is go through the WHL, the OHL, and the QMJHL. I'll explain Kovalchuk in a minute. You're going to want to go through each of those leagues, see those players that have either been drafted already, and I mean, it's tough. When you're going through the WHL and the OHL and the Q, and there's so much that I want to mention with this video here, but case in point, someone like Colin, you're probably going to want to upgrade, but he's not exactly the best example. Let me see who I can find here. 2 perfect examples, right, from upcoming drafts. Someone like Connor McClellan, who is, you'll never see him in franchise, ever, because EA gives him such a low rating. Someone like Peyton Krebs is high AHL top 6. He'll never be an impact player. This is a great example of using the data from Elite Prospects from the upcoming, the next 3 drafts, for example. Shout out to Jake and Smallwood and the Steve Dangle podcast. You're going to want to go through those next 3 drafts, look up the big names that are projected to go high in said drafts, and whether or not they're already in the game, like Peyton Krebs and Connor McClellan, or whether or not you have to add them into the game, like Vitaly Kravtsov, Tkachuk, as I mentioned, as well. Feel free to do so. Again, you only have to do as much as you want to do. Whether or not you end up adding in guys like Miettinen as well. Miettinen, let me say that name correctly. Shout out to Espoo United. It's all up to you. But that is the next step. Adding prospects from the upcoming draft, and then going through the CHL leagues, the 3 junior leagues, and bumping up those prospects from previous and upcoming drafts. Now, a lot of it's opinion. Again, whether or not you add in someone like Jack Hughes. A lot of it's opinion, though, right? I mean, you look at someone like Mason Shaw, for example. Here's what I typically tend to do, right? First line guy, if they were, because again, when you're talking about someone who was drafted last year in 2017, maybe even 2016, when you're talking about guys that are projected to be drafted in 2018, 19, and 20, it's all best guess. Nobody knows. That's why you can look back at a draft from 2010 and be like, oh my god, this guy was a 4th or 5th round pick. How the hell did that happen? How was Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk such late steals? Andre Palat, how does that happen? It's all best guess. But typically, there can be some players that information's a little bit hard to find. So if you want to just kind of keep it simple and just kind of be a little bit generic about it, a top 5 draft pick, medium elite for me. A 1st round pick, medium top 6. At least in terms of forward, medium top 4 for defensemen. Early to mid 2nd round pick, that's when we start getting into the low top 4. and low top 6 forward potential. Third round and fourth round guys, medium top 9 for forwards, medium top 6 as well. Although for defensemen, I typically extend medium top 6 to the third, fourth, and fifth rounds. Sixth round and seventh round for defensemen is medium 7th, whereas it would be medium bottom 6 from the 5th, 6th, and 7th round for forwards. Hopefully that's understandable. Goaltenders, it's a complete crapshoot. It really is. Whether or not you want to have someone drafted in the first round as medium elite, second round, even third round as a starter, fourth and fifth as fringe, sixth and seventh as backup, that's your call. Again, it's all kind of opinion, but that's just if you want to keep it very simple. Again, if you go as crazy as I did and you're looking at basically everybody, it can be a bit time consuming and you're going to want to keep it a little bit simple. Of course, you don't exactly, nor would I expect anybody to really go through every player and just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to look up a scouting report for every individual player. Like, odds are that's not going to happen. But I do think that that basically covers how I approached junior. So again, use elite prospects. Actually, we'll just recap. The free agent list, right? You go through that. You check elite prospects in the team depth chart. You add missing players who are in leagues or playing where the NHL simply doesn't have the rights to add them in. You then go on elite prospects. You check the draft center page, and you add prospects from the upcoming drafts, 2018, 19, and 2020. You then go through the CHL, and you bump up the prospects from previous and upcoming drafts who have been highly underrated by EA. And again, highly underrated. I think a prime example, it's one that I used last year quite a bit. It's another example that I'll use this year. Someone like Jordan Kyrou, who deserves to be a much higher draft pick. In terms of his potential in general, you could go medium or low top 6. That's your choice. I went medium top 6 because why not? It's Jordan Kyrou. From there, you might have guessed it, you're going to want to go through the SHL and Liga. There are also, of course, some NHL prospects in the Swiss National League and the Czech Extraliga. All you have to do with players from these leagues, keep it simple. Only look for the prospects that are actually going to kind of make a difference, right? I'm not sitting here saying, yeah, and edit Marc-Antoine Pouliot. Like, no. The only guys that you really have to worry about are the younger players that have a chance to make it. And you'll see some of them listed on elite prospects. And then you could also look at the team depth chart to see where someone is currently playing, to see if they are worth editing. Another thing, easy enough to do, is just to see if they were drafted recently. So someone like Tobias Geiser might be worth adding. So while the Extraliga and the National League are a bit tedious, Sweden and Finland, again, same approach where you just want to focus on the actual prospects of each team. Again, whether or not you use the depth chart on elite prospects, which elite prospects is great because it's not just listing the players that are signed, it also has the unsigned players. So if a player's right belongs to the Dallas Stars, for example, even though Miro Heiskanen I think is signed, it is showing that he's signed, he'll show up on that depth chart. You'll know right where to find that player to double check to see, okay, is this guy horrifically underrated and do they deserve to be set up? From there, you go to the AHL. At least that's what I did because I like working in reverse order. If you give a damn about the AHL, well, then here is your time to shine. You go through all the AHL leagues. I'll scroll through every team at the end at both the NHL and the AHL level, maybe even the junior leagues. We'll see. But what you're going to want to do, of course, is go through, use elite prospects, search every player. Search every player. You can make sure that the rosters are correct. Of course, also using elite prospects just by going to each of the team pages. Very easy site to navigate. Just double check, see who's on the right team, see if they're in the right spot. From there, you edit the players. Does someone deserve to be bumped up? Now, the big thing in deciding overalls for players, particularly outside of the AHL, would be using the official blog post that came out before NHL 18 was even released, where they talked about the overall overhaul, where here are the guidelines for the new overalls and how it's now decided, since of course they lowered the base overall for what it means to be an NHL player. A link to that will be in the description, and it's one of the main things that I based my overalls on, whether it was using sites like Elite Prospect, Hockey Reference, using this typical, or not using this typical, but using this guideline for deciding what these overalls are going to be. Although I will say, fair warning, it does say, I'm trying to think of an example here where it's like, a 78 overall player to an 82, third line checking, third line scoring. Oftentimes, they still have to be a point higher. So it's like, I think for second line forwards, I'm not looking at this right now, but I should know this by heart at this point. It says the lowest overall for a second line forward is an 82. From my experience, it still takes an 83 for them to be a true second line forward. Like an 82 overall for a forward is supposed to be the highest overall a third line scoring guy can be, and the lowest overall that a second line forward can be. That's often not the case from what I've seen. You're just going to want to consider it an 83 to, I believe it would be an 85 as a second line forward, and 86 and up is a first line forward. So kind of view it that way in thinking of that and keeping that in mind. So still, typically for a forward, anyone below a 75 is going to be kind of your depth guy. So if it's not someone who's an NHL regular, but they're really close to being at that level, Ty Ratty, for example, 74 overall is a pretty good rating for them. If they've played a couple of NHL games here or there, 72 to a 73 isn't a bad rating whatsoever. I'll explain why Pontus Aberg and Slepyshev are there soon. I think, though, that pretty much covers it. Same thing for defense, where actually it is a little bit different, where 75 to a 78 is a depth defenseman. So if you have someone who has like a couple of NHL starts in their career but doesn't really have any lately, someone like a Ryan Stanton, a 74 is fine. Whereas for the depth defenseman, again, a 75 to a 78 is kind of your depth range. You can kind of decide, all right, how close is an Eric Gryba to being an AHLer? Is he closer to a 74 or is he closer to a third line guy? He's kind of in the middle, 76 overall. So you can kind of, think of that process as it is. And like I said, we'll go through it all. You know what? I'm going to be unprofessional here as I crack open this Arnold Palmer in a can. Shout out to Arizona and Arnold Palmer. Sponsor me, not an ad. But you know what? Like I said, I'm tired and we got to get through this. And for anybody who watches me on stream, it's Arizona, and also I don't drink, so it's not going to be anything else. With the NHL players, also with some AHL players who have a bit more experience, the main thing, Elite Prospects, Hockey Reference, that guideline for what the overall should be, and ownthepuck.blogspot.ca. Now, here's the thing. Again, you are going to see overalls that you disagree with. You are going to see potentials that you disagree with. Some people might not have the accurate player type. Maybe they're the wrong position, or at least in your opinion, they're the wrong position. I'll say this. In terms of a player's position, that comes down to whatever their primary position is listed as on eliteprospects.com. So there are some players like Adam Henrique is a center to left wing. He's primarily a center, though. Another example would be, I think Jake Gensel is still listed as a center, even though he's played a lot of left wing. Center is still listed as a primary position. Here is the main way that I went about deciding these overalls. And again, it is using stats. It's using real-world stats, looking at Own the Puck kind of as a basis, which ownthepuck.blogspot.ca, again, the link is in the description, brings up hero charts. A lot of you might be familiar with those. They're very simplistic, but it was a good way last season to get kind of a general feel for how good a player is. And again, seeing as how time-consuming this is, and that I'm doing it out of obsession, and also knowing that, like I said, I feel like it can make my series a bit more interesting and a bit better overall, I wanted to keep it simple in a time-friendly fashion. And even though, I mean, imagine if here's the thing. If this was my job, yes, I would look up everything in the book to make sure Adam Henrique is his attributes are as accurate as possible. But, I had to be somewhat responsible, we'll say, with my time, especially to get these series going. But here is the way that I would approach setting up a player. You look up Adam Henrique on Own the Puck, right? And from there, you'll notice an ice time, a goals per 60, assists per 60, shot suppression, or actually it would be shots generated per 60, or yeah, shots generated per 60 and shot suppression per 60. Or whatever, general stats. I just felt like saying per 60. So what you would do is you take a look at his average ice time. From there are kind of basic guidelines for, okay, here's what the average player with that amount of ice time played like, and you can see how they did in those 4 major categories. To keep it simple, you add up those 4 major categories. You get a number. For Adam Henrique, the number might be an 18, whereas the average player in that range has a 20. So you'd consider him a below average second line forward, right? According to EA's overall numbers, a below average second line forward is an 82 to an 83 overall. So then you go to Elite Prospects and you take a look and you see, all right, Adam Henrique, is he having a better season than last year, in which case he's an 83, or is he having a worse season than last year, in which case he'd be the 82. And that's how I went about it. Overly simplified. Again, if I'm not explaining this well, I'm sorry. There's a lot to cover. We haven't even started scrolling through created players and teams, and my God. But I think you kind of get the point. If there's a question or whatever, if there's confusion over what I'm describing, just let me know down in the comments. But again, that pretty much covers the entire process, from the free agent list, the depth chart, adding prospects, editing the CHL, the foreign leagues, editing the AHL, and editing the NHL. Of course, Own the Puck is really good, and basically only good for the NHL players. Now, there's going to be some occasions where someone didn't play enough last season, or they're a rookie this year, and you just gotta kind of decide, well, how good do I want them to be? And in which case, you know, EA did overrate some players, but in the case of someone like a Brock Besser or a Charlie McAvoy, they might not have been all that far off. So again, it all comes down to an opinion, but I do recommend using EA's guidelines for what a player is. Whether or not you think that's the way it should be, again, it's just opinion, but knowing what I know about the game, seeing how the game typically plays out, I decided that the best course of action was to follow through with the kind of the built-in, the built-in guidelines that are already in the game. Now, here's the deal as far as creative players. I know that you're not going to be able to see the potentials. That is why we are going to scroll through the teams later. But hell, if you're lazy, not if you're lazy, but you know, if it gets to be too tedious to watch at that point, just be like, okay, Altai Bymarkian. You can, I always botch his name, Altai Bymarkian. He's a Chicago prospect, by the way. For example, you can't see what his actual potential is right now. You'll be able to see it in a few minutes, if not 20 minutes. You can just say, okay, well, you can look him up for yourself and just kind of guess. Well, should he be high top 6, medium top 6, low top 6? I will say, you will notice, certain prospects are on junior teams. That's if they are basically old enough to be on junior teams. It is also beneficial if someone is on a junior team, or if someone has a contract, for them to be on a junior team. I will say this in terms of making sure rosters are accurate. If somebody has signed an NHL deal, Colin is actually the perfect example, and that contract doesn't kick in until next year, just leave him unsigned in junior, because otherwise the game will have one too many contracts. I will also say that you may notice you have some players that will be over in Sweden is the primary league that I'll dump players in. Pagansky is a great example, although again, he's another example of someone whose contract kicks in next year. He just signed with St. Louis. I'm trying to actually find the perfect example. Alex Kovalchuk is somebody who, you'll notice I have a couple of those guys in the game, but actually he's the perfect example. If somebody doesn't have a contract yet, and they're too old for junior, put them in Sweden. All you have to do is, for example, you add Alex Kovalchuk to the Providence Bruins, or when you add him into the game, just simply give him Bruins rights. We'll go into edit player. Oh my god, this video. Oh, I was dreading this. You go into edit player, you give him his pro team, here is the key. Here is the key, right? You give him his pro team. He doesn't have the contract. You put him on Sweden, and the Bruins have the ability to sign him. Or, as I've seen in some of my test runs, for Kovalchuk in particular, some teams might pick him up. Here is the key that you are going to want to do for basically every creative player. It does not matter when they were drafted. Put them as a 2017 draft pick. This gives the AI the ability to sign these guys for up to 3 years instead of having a logjam of unsigned players hit the free agent market in year 1. That is the main tip I would give you. So for anybody, Altai Bamarakian, Adam Fox, it doesn't matter when they were drafted, make sure you assign them as a 2017 draft pick so that the teams actually have time to sign them. But we'll look, again, I'm going to scroll through this relatively quickly. You'll get to see the rest of the potentials and all that happy, fun stuff at a different point in time later on in the video. Of course, as far as who these prospects belong to, just search them up on Elite Prospects, of course, unless you already know what team they are on. Now, in the case of someone like Andre Peterson, that is someone who you'll notice on Elite Prospects, the Ducks still have the rights to Peterson and can sign him if he wants to come back to the NHL. For a player like that, you don't have to add him in. Kovalchuk was in the same boat. You'll also have somebody like Austin Wagner, who, along with Jeremy Bracco in the AHL, for some reason, at least as of the update prior to the most current one. So the most current roster update, as far as I know, is the one that put Ryan Donato into the game. The one before that, players like Wagner and Jeremy Bracco were missing from their AHL teams for whatever licensing reasons. So you might not have to add him into the game anymore. But, you know, it might be worth it. It might be worth it. Benton Moss is another prospect that was added into the game. And again, someone like Brett Seney here, who signed a contract. He signed it for next year, even though I believe he's going to be playing. I think he's going to be playing with the Devils. You get the point. Same thing applies with what I said about Colin. Don't add that contract in. It's just not worth it as we get to quite a few of the other prospects. There was something else I wanted to mention about these particular prospects that unfortunately is not coming to mind, which is quite frustrating, but I feel like we've covered pretty much everything. Again, there is so much when it comes to this. When it comes to adding in these players, when it comes to just, oh my God, making sure players end up on the right team, making sure that their rights are where they should be. It's pretty ridiculous. I added Jay Sakic just because. I mean, it's Joe Sakic's kid, so why not? Someone like Dane Burks, who just signed with Pittsburgh, is another example. Put him over in Sweden. He's too old to be signed or to be assigned to a junior team, but as long as you give him Pittsburgh rights and put him over in Sweden, the Penguins do have the ability to sign him, and of course he can be traded, make him a 2017 draft pick, and the Penguins have a few years to sign him. And of course, because EA updated how the game works, players can actually progress now when they're not signed. So it all kind of works out. As we continue to scroll through, I think that actually pretty much covered everything. My God, there are so many players. Case in point about adding players that aren't in a draft until a few years from now with Daniil Gushchin, which is ridiculous. We have David Pope, Dylan Sandberg. Am I going to sit here and name everyone? No, I'm not. Yes, Dylan Sakura is only a 74. Fight me. Like I said, I massively, even though I said what I said at the beginning of this, no doubt there will be, why is this guy only this? He should be better. He should be worse. What the hell? It all makes sense, again, when you stay uniform to the method that I used. And for the most part, it's ended up with the elite players being pretty goddamn elite. And yes, I added in Hayden Hockey. Now we get to Ilya Kovalchuk. Here's the thing. You might be asking yourself, Tougie, how did you assign Ilya Kovalchuk to Calgary? How are you handling Ilya Kovalchuk coming back to the NHL, apparently in 2018 for the 2018-19 season? You have two main options, if not three, when it comes to adding Ilya Kovalchuk into the game. Option number one, You add him to whatever team you're going to be using in franchise mode. You have him on a 1-year deal, and you release him at the end of the year. He goes to free agency. He's going to fetch the $6 to $8 million. No problem. Option 2, you give his rights to the New Jersey Devils, and you put him over in Sweden. You wouldn't make him a 2017 draft pick. You give the Devils a year. You give them a chance to sign him, which 99 times out of 100, from what I can tell, the Devils will be able to sign him, so you might not want to go with that one. And then there's option 3, which is the option that I have settled with here, where you make Ilya Kovalchuk, but you make him 18 years old. Add him to a junior team, go back to this menu here, the Create Player menu, edit him, and then make him his actual age, and he will stay on that team. He will be untouchable for the first year. You will get to free agency at the end of year 1, and he will be there. However, he will only sign an entry-level deal, 3 years at $9.25. So keep that in mind. However, the reason why I like this is, number 1, everybody has a chance to enter the Ilya Kovalchuk sweepstakes, because the most you can do is offer him the max entry-level deal, and basically every franchise gets involved. No telling where he's going to go. In terms of realism, yes, Kovalchuk not signing for $5 million plus might be unrealistic, or you can view it as I view it, which is Kovalchuk signing for bare minimum because he wants to come back and win a cup, even though he can, of course, sign for or sign with absolutely terrible teams. So there's that. There is that. But I wanted to cover the whole Kovalchuk deal. Jeremiah Addison's another guy, as is Jeremy Bracco, like Austin Wagner that I mentioned before. So keep that in mind with Kovalchuk, but that is the best way that I found to have him not factor in to the first season. In efforts to keep it realistic, that is the best way that I've found to make sure that he shows up at the end of year 1. I personally don't like the idea of adding him into the game for year 1. I try to keep it as accurate and realistic as I possibly can, and that was the best way to handle it. My God, we still have so many more names to go through. Again, with any player, all you have to do is pause when I go over their name, and you take it from there. As we take a swig. And again, if you look up, and if you're like, oh, okay, well, what player is this team on? Just look them up on Elite Prospects. That is the only thing that I can suggest to you, because obviously, with as many players as we have added here, it's not exactly worth my time to sit here and go into edit player for each guy to show you guys all the information. I think you get that, right? I think you get that. But, like I said, there's a couple of different, there's a lot to go in. There's a lot that goes into it. For the Kovalchuk thing, there's a couple of different ways to handle it. As far as how many prospects you want to add in, as far as whether or not you want to add in guys like Nikita Trampkin and still give him Vancouver Canuck rights and give them a chance to bring him back, or that gives you the ability to trade for the rights to Trampkin, and then you can sign him. I will say this about the potentials of the players in the first year draft, because a lot of people are going to be like, Quentin Hughes, what the hell, only top 4. I took a look. When you go to Draft Center, there will be the numerous reports for the top 31, right? The prospect rankings. When it comes to how I handled it, the top 5 projected players have been given medium elite. That being, actually in the case of Dahlin, he's been given high elite, but that also has Dahlin, Svechnikov, Zadina, Tkachuk, and Adam Boqvist are the projected top 5 according to those reports that are listed on Elite Prospects. I only gave that potential to the top 5. I will say, not all these overalls and potentials are set in stone, although it's kind of close. I might change some things with some of the prospects, but for the most part, I didn't want to overload the first year draft with medium elites, right? I just didn't want to do it. So that is why someone, whether or not it's, I've already looked at numerous players, but that's why you're not going to see a ton of medium elites, right? Because I didn't want to overload it. Those 5 that I mentioned are the consensus top 5 if you look at all of those lists, at least when I looked at them. So again, and yes, I added Scott Foster, just for memes. No, he's not a 99 franchise. I didn't go that far with the meme. Maybe I should have. But I think you get it, again, as my mind's working 1,000 miles a minute, just to try and think back to see if I forgot anything. I don't believe I did. But, of course, there's always a good chance that I ended up doing so. Valeri Nichushkin is another guy, much like Kovalchuk, that we added back in. So, like I said, Elite Prospects is the place to go to add in, or to see who's missing, all the top prospects, whether from your favorite team, just the league in general, but that is the crazy amount of players that we added into this game. And you know what? For dramatic effect, let's scroll all the way through while I take another swig of my lovely beverage. It's fairly ridiculous. That brings us to the rosters. Now, I only have 18 players per NHL roster, just to try and keep the starting salary cap down and to try and influence the game to not release anybody. That's why you would have had some higher overall guys in the AHL. So let's scroll through here. You get the look at what I have these potentials set to. I will quickly scroll through the attributes. Now, some of these attributes I might not have changed. If I felt like the overalls were on point and right where they needed to be, there's a good chance that I didn't change anything. So keep that in mind. But what I did is I took all the potentially NHL-ready players and simply put all of them onto the Ducks, for example, go best lines, and just send down whoever is not needed. As you get a look at John Gibson, who should be a Vezina candidate this year because he's an absolute monster. Now, I explained the process for forwards and defensemen, right? Goaltenders, it's somewhat similar, except there are no hero charts for goaltenders. So what you're going to want to do, or at least what I did for goalies, is I took a look at the save percentages for each goaltender this year and the past 2 years prior. I took a look at those save percentages, added them up, divide by 3, you get your average save percentage over the past 3 seasons, and that was a big indicator as far as who deserves those higher ratings. Now, you can take a look at those save percentages, and you can kind of segment it out to see like who has that truly elite save percentage. So an elite goaltender, as defined by this game, is an 87 plus, although it's kind of more of an 88 plus. So you could decide, is it a 915? Is it a 917 save percentage that makes someone elite? And then you can go up from there. Same thing for who would be defined as a starter and as a backup, so on and so forth. The potentials, of course, a lot of it's opinion, a lot of it's on how the goaltender has done as of late. Also factor in how many games someone's played. So Carey Price, for example, where he missed quite a few games 2 seasons ago, you might want to just skip that season and go back an extra season and look at that number in particular. So keep that in mind as we get a look at the Arizona Coyotes. With that said, again, I think that pretty much covers it all, as we might be getting to some of the overalls that some people disagree with. I don't know if there will be any controversial ones on Arizona, to be honest. I mean, the bottom line is the Coyotes end up being a pretty bad team. Well, what's controversial about that? A lot of younger players, but a fairly young team. I think Clayton Keller had a higher starting overall, according to EA, which, again, I changed. And that's one thing you'll notice about some of these numbers, is that EA, and I don't blame them, at the start of the year, decided that it was for the best to just kind of guess, to kind of assume who was going to be really good this season in terms of prospects. Someone that comes to mind would be Colin White on Ottawa. A prospect, for example, would be Montana Onyebuchi. There were a couple of guys where EA just kind of decided, hey, let's just go out on a limb and say that this guy is going to be really good. So you might notice some lower overalls. Again, it's my opinion. Here's perhaps the first controversial overall, but feel free to look at some stats. I defend my choice. And before you call Bruins bias, wait until you see some overalls on Ottawa, Vancouver, and Montreal. All right? So just wait. But case in point where I kept Besser and McAvoy basically the same. I'll say this as well. I will say this as well. Keep in mind that an overall number isn't everything. Like, Carlo's an 83, right? Offensively, he's probably not going to do a whole hell of a lot, you know? Like, he's capable, although this season he hasn't put up points. He's capable of it. Kevin Miller's an 81. Offensively, not that great. A lot of it goes into the physical category. And again, that's kind of what you have to look at. You use Own the Puck to see where Kevin Miller's at. You can use Hockey Reference or even like a fantasy site to take a look at how often somebody hits, how often somebody blocks shots. All of that can factor into how you get someone to the overall you want them at. So again, you look at the Own the Puck for Kevin Miller, you say, okay, he needs to be like an elite third line guy. All right, how am I going to get him there? What is he actually good at? Then you look at the attributes and you see, okay, defensively he's pretty solid, and he's one hell of a physical player, and that's how you get the overall there. That way, as I accidentally backed out a little bit too far, that way too, paying attention to the stats a little bit more, as I'm going to skip ahead to Edmonton, don't worry, I'll go back, is you end up getting someone like Connor McDavid who, yes, his defensive category is still high. I don't believe it's as high also. I'm pretty sure the physical category is lower on McDavid on my rosters. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I have the lower defensive category and the lower physical category, which does factor in because you don't want McDavid necessarily winning the Selke, which happens quite a bit, admittedly, with the EA's rosters, but that's just how it happens. Robin Leonard being an 86, potentially controversial, I am aware. Again, Bruins fan who made him half decent. Even have someone like Marco Scandella who might be a little bit higher. There's a couple of guys on the Sabres where people might be like, what the hell is that overall? But that's okay. I stand by my method. It works for me. Again, like I said at the start, it doesn't mean that my rosters are perfect and that it's the end-all be-all, and that your roster has to be set up the same way. If you make changes, you don't have to make changes. You can just roll with the EA default roster, which, all things concerned, they do a pretty decent job. Although I will say, and I mentioned this on stream, for the love of God, can we get an updated picture for Sam Reinhart? One that isn't from 5+ years ago? Like, that picture has to be from when he was 15 or 16 years old. It has to be. Like, come on, man. Even if he doesn't look that much different, just an updated picture, please. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for, man. So we look at Calgary. There might potentially... oh, boy, I don't know who I'm talking about. Might potentially be an overall some people disagree with. But, again, to each their own. Again, I didn't play favorites. And you'll see that, particularly with someone perhaps like a Brendan Gallagher. Didn't exactly play favorites, just went with the stats that I saw. Although, again, at some points, with some rookies or whatever, you have to take a few liberties and just be like, okay, well, let's bump this guy up. Again, with certain rookies, even like someone like the Brincat, it's like, well, what are you going to make him? There's no track record. Do you bump up somebody beyond where they probably should be? Because of one season of success, how crazy do you get with it? That is always the question. There is so much to look at right now. Oh, I'm freaking out. There is so much to look at, and I'm scared. Oh, I'm scared that the voice might not hold out. Like, I don't know, man. But, like I said, the video for this last year did relatively well. There was obviously interest, especially with how much I discussed the changes that were being made. And you know what? Why not display the fruits of my labor with how much ridiculous editing went in to this madness known as what we're currently looking at here. Make no mistake, there was a whole lot of time invested. I should go back to a year ago. I felt like I I breezed through that a little bit too quickly. Speaking of DeBrincat, he's an 81. Offensively, still very much capable of putting up a ton of points, even 20 points. He's 19. He's an 81. It's fair. It is. Jordan Tootoo I actually kept in. Case in point, one thing I didn't touch up upon right now, as far as players like Marian Hossa or the multiple guys on Vegas like David Clarkson, you have Joffrey Lupul on Toronto, Jaromir Jagr in Calgary, players like that who basically just get put on long-term injured reserve and their cap hit doesn't count towards anything. I just removed them and put them on an international team just like one of the free agents. That's really the only way that I felt like it was fair to go about it. If you want to leave Marian Hossa in, by all means. If you want to leave Jordan Tootoo in, who looks like his career might be done, by all means. I wouldn't disagree with it. That's personal preference. But again, considering that they are in real life put on LTIR, the team still has to pay them, of course, but they don't count against the cap. It just kind of makes sense to get rid of them, as opposed to making them 36 overall and having them take up a roster spot. It just doesn't make sense to keep them. So that is how I handled it. Now, I will say this too. As far as me like taking feedback and suggestions like, oh, you should make this guy better or make this guy worse, I'm not against it, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm against that. I'm not saying like, no, my ratings are set in stone. Just, if you're going to make that argument, actually make it an argument. Don't just be like, oh, Colin Wilson. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue for Colin Wilson unless they do so in a joking manner now that I've brought it up. But Wenberg is a good example. If you want to argue in favor of Wenberg and that he should be a higher overall, despite the fact that his offensive stats are going to lead to him putting up some points, and he's not that physical of a player. If you want to argue that Pierre-Luc Dubois shouldn't be medium elite, make it an actual argument, you know? Don't just be like, oh, well, this, no, you're wrong. Just don't change it. It's like, well, why? When I'm sitting here putting in this much work, looking at numbers that support in some ways, if not numerous ways, the overalls and the potentials that have been given out, I'm going to need a little bit more than just, nope, disagree, change it, if you get what I mean. But I am thinking, I'm hoping this video will be up on Saturday, and that odds are Monday the new series will start. At least one of them. I'm hoping. That's kind of the timeline I'm hoping for. I am massively behind schedule. I wanted the new series to start up as of last Wednesday. That did not happen, as you all know. As I continue to down this can of Arnold Palmer as quickly as I can. Because I will say, after nearly 50 minutes straight of talking and trying to make sure, really high stress talking, high stress levels, high pressure, because I don't want to forget anything, because again, a lot did go into this in terms of, the potentials and the method that I used, and editing the AHL, the free agent list, prospects, adding in players. There's a lot that went into this. So there's definitely that pressure to not forget anything. But as is typically the case, I'm pretty sure that would have happened to begin with. So hey, what's the concern? What is the concern? Oh my God, we're not even halfway through the NHL teams right now, but I know people want this information. Now here's the thing, right? One of the most consistent comments on Twitch, as I was editing these rosters, I was going through the test runs, one of the most consistent comments, and I imagine it'll be a fairly consistent comment here as well, would be, I wish there was roster sharing, right? And yeah, I agree. Now, whether or not that's going to happen anytime soon, bottom line is, shout out to Landercog on Twitch, by the way. I don't know what it is. It's like, if Eero Pakarainen had hair, there'd be like, I could believe that they were cousins. Now, I will say, when it comes to roster sharing, is it something EA wants to add in? I can say with pretty much certainty, yes. How high up it is on the priority list, though, and how soon we see it, I don't know. And that is pretty disappointing, admittedly. Now, I've talked about this before. When it comes to roster editing, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time, if not compulsively, obsessively, since I was a kid. It's just something that I've always wanted. I've always wanted that, you know, the most realistic sim that I could possibly have. I want those rosters up to date. I remember NHL 07, 08, 09, you know, getting home from school on deadline day and, you know, having the laptop up, looking, or just even being on my mom's computer, having the NHL site up before Twitter was really even a thing, and waiting for the trades to roll in on NHL.com and adding them into the game the second they went down. Hell, I still did that this year on deadline day, and we ran franchise mode sims on Twitch. It's still an addiction. Why? I don't know, because it is a very tedious and time-consuming addiction. Now, of course, it is a little bit more rewarding to, you know, to have, I guess, a YouTube channel to back it up as reasoning as to why I should be doing it. That kind of helps, as opposed to just, you know, setting it up for the sake of setting it up. But, I don't know. I don't know. A part of me still wishes this, this wasn't... again, I would never make light of, you know, OCD or any other obsessive compulsive disorders, for lack of a better term. But, you know, is this a sign that there may be a little bit of a tendency on my part to be obsessive about certain things? Perhaps. Perhaps. As, again, like I mentioned, any player who isn't actually on Minnesota, like, oh, he plays on Minnesota right now in real life. If he isn't a high enough overall, he would be on the AHL squad, right? So like I said, I just trusted the game to go best lines. As we have reached the halfway point with Montreal. The halfway point. So, again, allow me to be a little bit quick with my progression here. Case in point, Brendan Gallagher, an 87 overall. I can't take anything away from Gallagher. He is one hell of a player. He is one hell of a player. Now, here's the thing. We're almost an hour into this, right? If you expected me, once I got all that information out there, right, which was really the biggest concern, controversial overall, which was really the biggest concern. It's just getting all that information out there, explaining everything, how I went about this. Once I got that info out there, then the problem that becomes, well, what the hell am I going to talk about? Because if I plan on going through AHL teams, junior teams, like, I mean, this is just going to be stupidly time consuming. But here's the problem. I have to do this. Because if I don't, the comment section is going controversial overall. The comment section is going to be nothing but, hey, can I see this guy's overall potential? Can I see this guy's overall potential? It's like, I might as well just go through all of it and get it done in one shot, in one video, and then it's there, and people can look at whatever player they want to look at whenever they want, and it all works out. Taylor Hall's a monster. An absolute monster. And Nico is still an 82. As we get to the Islanders, good old John Tavares. Can't wait to see what team he goes to, because the Islanders certainly and sure as hell aren't going to keep him at this point. I don't see how that's possible. I will say, Anders Lee gave him a pretty good shot at that 90 offensive awareness. Speaking of underrated players, Anders frickin' Lee. Actually, there you go, good old Ross Johnston. It is weird, though, that best lines for the AI still pretty much sets it up every time as the fourth line being a grind line. It's like the assistant coach who sets up the lines is stuck in 2011, where everyone needed, 3 lines. Perhaps controversial overall, right there. I don't know. It's a weird setup. Perhaps controversial overall. I think an 87 for Hank is quite fair. As we get to the defense, perhaps a controversial overall. But again, numbers speak for themselves. Mark Stahl being an 81 and Brendan Smith still being an 80. Perhaps a very controversial overall. But, like I said, we were relatively consistent. The problem is, I did stream before recording this, so there's no other real discussions to have, I suppose. I mean, I'm trying to think of, like, hockey topics to touch upon that I haven't really touched upon yet. I mean, the Bruins are in first place to date this video. That's tremendous. Let me know in the future. And here come the troll comments from, 2 hours after this goes up. The Bruins lost in the first round, swept lol. Can't wait for those. Let me know in the future. How'd the Bruins do in the playoffs? Did my pictures on Twitter and Instagram, even though I don't have an Instagram. If the Bruins win the Stanley Cup, I'll make an Instagram for when I go to the parade. Which, let me tell you, a championship parade, something you'd know nothing about, you scumbag. Yeah, championship parades are tremendous. Just tremendous. Eric frickin' Carlson. He's a monster. Cody Ceci. Perhaps better than a lot of people thought he would have been. Mark Borowiecki. You're an alien. Like a literal alien. Like, what are you even doing? What are you even doing? Now, I will say, as we scroll through, and by the way, my bias, I don't think so. Ivan Provorov's that good at 20 years old, and Ghost Bear's that good. I will say, Andrew McDonald might be a controversial overall. When we get to the AHL, I am going to scroll through most of it. If we see kind of like a name value player, I'll take a look. But there also are going to be quite a few players that just aren't a whole hell of a lot. I was going to say a whole hell of a lot important. That's not English. It just isn't. We're about an hour into this, and now I'm broken. I'm going to dye a blonde streak into my hair and ride the mower of lawn straight to the retirement home. Oh, baby Pittsburgh. Yeah, see, there you go, Jake Gensel. Still being a center. Case in point. Shout out to the hockey guy and Connor Sherry. I will never say Connor Sherry. It's Sherry. He's wrong. Don't tell me how to pronounce your last name correctly. Sherry. God damn it. Sounds, when you say the name, I've never been able to take the name Connor Sherry seriously, because here's the thing, I'm not the biggest South Park fan, but it does sound like Randy Marsh, like drunkenly saying the name Sherry. I don't know, it's just how I always envisioned it. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know down in the comments below. Let me know as well if you actually got the notification for this video. Shout out to YouTube for continually fucking people over. I will say this. Make sure you have the little notification bell checked, because apparently that's a gigantic help in terms of, I mean, number one, you should subscribe, but make sure you have that bell checked, because YouTube continues to just seppuku at this point, like just killing themselves. Not even honorably. So that's not even the right terminology. But, you know, the best thing to do would be to make sure that you got that bell checked, and perhaps most importantly, follow me on Twitter. So I always put out alerts when I'm live on when I'm live on Twitch, when I have videos up on the YouTubes. So that's probably a good way, because I do plan, like I said, within the next 48 hours or so, hopefully, of this video going up, there will be the start of at least one new series. Not to mention, I will be getting back into the swing of things with the FHM episodes. But now that these rosters are done as well, I talked about this in the most recent update video, that will give me the chance to really start to sink my teeth into MLB The Show and potentially bring that over to the channel. So there's a whole lot going on, but I mean, I'm it's kind of shitty to say, but over the past week and a half, 2 weeks even, because 2 weeks ago I was sick, which sucked, obviously. And pretty much my entire time was wake up, edit these rosters, go to bed, and drink a shitload of orange juice in between. The schedule was still kind of similar even after I was sick. I put a lot of stuff on the back burner. A lot of my free time I kind of put on the back burner, because I'm like, you know what? I need to get this done. I do. I need to get this done as soon as possible. I need to get this out to the people. I need to start these new series. Matthew's only an 87. Controversy. William Nylander at center. perhaps controversy, turtleneck. You're hilarious. It's still so weird. I can't imagine what it's been like as a Toronto fan, seeing him in Toronto. It's still weird to me that Patrick Marleau is a Leaf. It's just strange, man. It's one of those things that you just don't get used to. Morgan Riley in 87, Jake Gardiner in 85, Zaitsev in 84. I'm so kind. Hell, Roman Polak being a 78. Like, that's kind. Let's be honest. Curtis McElhinney. In fairness, he's deserved it. McElhinney's been great since going to Toronto. Vancouver. The Couve, which apparently people from Vancouver hate me saying. So I will continue to call it the Couve, because it is the Couve. Anyway, Brock Besser, 85 overall. What a guy. Darren Archibald, shout out to him. Controversial overall, I'd say, with Louis Eriksson and UC Jokinen, but look up their defensive abilities. It's warranted. It's warranted. And technically, according to EA, they're still perhaps a controversial overall, but I'm sorry. I don't buy into the Horvat hype, and neither do the stats. Neither do the stats. The Vegas Golden Knights. Eric Howla. Cody Heek, Thomas Nosek. Everybody. Marchessault's an 84 because I didn't go too crazy with it. I mean, I went kind of crazy with it, but not too crazy with it. James Neal, Riley Smith. Case in point, if you want to talk to me about having a bias, I made Riley Smith an 86. And deservingly so. Colin Miller, how I miss you. Nate Schmidt, $1 million smile. $1 million smile. 4-1 Nate Schmidt. And Marc-Andre Fleury. Turns out he's a pretty good goaltender. Not really sure if you knew that, but yeah. Turns out Marc-Andre Fleury, pretty good goaltender, as I just don't have another topic to discuss. I brought up the Bruins being in first place. Whether or not it lasts, who knows? We'll see. I can't really think of anything else. You know what? On my laptop, I should load up the Hockey Guys channel and just see what topics he's covered, because, man, that guy's on top of everything in terms of news. In terms of news. But we've almost made it through the NHL. One team left in the Winnipeg Jets. Paul Stastny, you got robbed by Scott Foster, by the way, buddy. You will probably not live that down, being the butt end of Scott Foster's jokes for the rest of time, because he robbed you in an NHL game. Scott Foster did that. He did. Line A in 86. Oh my God. Look at his fucking shot, though. I can't even be nice about it. Look at his shot. He's a monster. Dustin Byfuglien. Is there anybody who can possibly say Dustin Byfuglien's name without being like, Byfuglien? Because I can't. Every time I see it, I gotta say Byfuglien, and then I gotta say Byfuglien. Every time. That completes the NHL. Which means, my God, the AHL. I will say, actually, one of the other steps, see, this is why you stick around, one of the other steps, ECHL. When you check the depth chart, you will see guys in the ECHL. You're going to want to make sure that you put them on the NHL lineup, because if they are in the ECHL, they will not appear. A good example, the dual goaltenders in Tyler Parsons and Mason McDonald, they will not appear in franchise mode for Calgary. So you're going to want to check that out. But let's see, who do we have here? So again, nobody overly important. The most important thing here would just be the overall for most of these guys. Anybody below like a 74, I'm not checking, right? The most important thing there is the overall number and the potential, right? So it's the only thing that I'd suggest checking out with most of those players. All right. So that way, too, we can actually breeze through this somewhat quickly. But I'll give you the time to check things out. Well, Lannon and Billy Polka. England as well. 3 low top 4 defensemen. Low top 4 defensemen that progressed fairly well. Like I said, a lot of these overalls I was pretty much set on after running test runs on franchise. And I'm happy to see how some low top 6 guys progress. Colin White, still a medium top 6 guy. Not a 78 overall to start. No. No. Blake Coleman, by the way. This guy scored some crazy goals for New Jersey. I actually picked him up in fantasy. Guy's a beast. Oh, he's a beast. We will look at Jesper Bratt's stats. The Bratt stats. Stefan Nosen as well. We might as well. And Lappin. And Nathan Bastian. Just because. We were on a run. We were on a roll. And that's all that matters. Right? I guess. Mackenzie Blackwood was horrifically overrated by EA as well. Just horrifically overrated. It was kind of crazy. I don't know why Seidenberg's high top 6. To be honest, I think that might have been a mistake. I think I might have meant to have made him low top 6. The fact is, he's old enough. It's not really going to be a factor anyway. So it's one of those things where it's like, who cares? And that is the thing for a lot of these guys who are older. Is, I mean, their potential is just going to reset to whatever the hell the game thinks it should be once you load up franchise. I mean, you know, for Seidenberg, it's pretty much going to, I would assume it's going to, I mean, he's going to lock it to exact top 6, maybe even 7th. So, that's just kind of the way it works. That's the way it is. That is the way. The cookie crumbles, to just, you know, mash together two different phrases. But like I said, at least this way, you can see the potentials. You can see what matters, you know, as far as the overall numbers for these lower guys. Again, if it's a major player or if it's someone who is kind of NHL level, who's just getting buried, it is what it is. Now, I will say, one of the complications would be that the St. Louis Blues do not have a AHL team at the start. That's why whenever you start up franchise mode, you have the ability to create their team. All you have to do to make sure that someone has their rights is obviously you can go into edit player. Just make sure if you're adding like a Tage Thompson from the St. Louis Blues to either the Chicago Wolves or the San Antonio Rampage, where they are housing players this season, just make sure you keep current affiliation. Don't accidentally assign them to either Colorado or the Vegas Golden Knights. So keep an eye out for that. Also, you will notice, again, some players that were created, like Eric Robinson, this is where you'll be able to see their actual potential. And, of course, we would have already passed guys like Christian Wolanin and stuff like that. So this is that part where you can kind of just see. It's like, okay, well, I know, you know, like when I was showing creative players earlier, you can be like, okay, well, clearly that guy's on Cleveland. Let's skip forward to the part of the video where he scrolls through Cleveland, and then you can see his actual potential. Pain in the ass? Yes. And actually, you know what? McElrath at low elite should probably change that to like medium top 6, maybe even medium 7th. But he is 25 years old, so it kind of doesn't matter. He's not really going to progress in time. So it's not a big deal. Not a big deal in the slightest as we continue to breeze through again. For all of this, it's just a matter of if there's stats you want to see, you know, if you wanted to take a better look at this, just pause. That's all you got to do. Just pause the video at that point in time to see the potentials and the overalls and the such. The such is perhaps the most important part. Never forget the such as you get your goaltenders, including, I can't pronounce his name. I've never been able to pronounce his name. If you watched the Manhattan Project last year, you'll know I cannot pronounce that guy's name. I've pretty much stopped trying. So, it's fine. Why embarrass yourself? Make sure you pay attention to Johansson. Underrated dude. At least I think he was underrated by the game. At this point, I can't even remember what half of EA's ratings are. It's just been ridiculous. Again, adding in so many players, actually. In case anyone wanted to see Stevenson and Kursich again. There you go. Eriksson Ek, Luke Kunin, Landon Ferrara. So the AHL team gets a little bit crowded, but it's better than having the NHL team get crowded, especially too if you play without injuries. That way, you know, you're making sure that everyone's basically playing. So there's different ways you can handle it with setting up the roster, but again, this was just how I chose to go about it. I am nearly out of Arnold Palmer, which I am quite concerned about, given that I'm not sure how my voice is going to hold up for the rest of this. Quite concerned. But we'll see what happens. We're already an hour into this. I'm tired as hell. I'm ready for sleep. I was ready for sleep before I recorded this, but I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to be a man. I'm going to mess up my sleep schedule entirely. I'm going to be a man and put out this video, hopefully at a somewhat decent time, but probably not, for all the beautiful people to see. Now, Nolan Patrick, being on the AHL squad, it might cause some complications. To be honest, I haven't tested it out. If you want to be thorough about it and you set up things exactly the way I do, just put him back on the weekends. Or keep him on Philly and just have him be a healthy scratch. That's your choice. Be your own person. I believe in you. Have faith in you and your decisions. Can you tell I'm tired? Can you tell that I am out of topics of discussion? Because I am. Because I very much am. Now, case in point here to certain guys signing contracts. One of the things you might want to do, especially with Mrazek being traded for, I would probably recommend going to Carter Hart's contract on the Everett Silvertips, and changing his contract length from 0 or from 3 to 0, because otherwise Dustin Tokarski will get released. Not a major deal. Just saying, if you want to avoid it, I would recommend doing that. Similar thing will happen for the Anaheim Ducks and Antoine Vermette, in which case all you have to do is just remove a prospect. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but hey, you got to do the best with what you got. And, with this system and the way this game works, it's a little bit difficult sometimes to do the best with the hand that you're dealt. But, you know what? I try. That's all. I try. And that's all you can do. All you can do in life is just try. Be motivational. Yeah, I need to take off this sweatshirt because I am just dying. It got so hot in this room. Oh my god, it got so hot in this room. But I guess that's what happens when you're recording for an hour with basically non-stop talking. This video, at the very least, is going on my resume. It is. For how tired I am, for how I've been able to carry this informational yet completely goddamn boring video. Keep in mind, Matt Molson, while he is on loan to the Ontario Reign, as I take off the sweatshirt, because again, I'm dying. While he is on loan to the Ontario Reign, the second you load up franchise, he's going to be Sabres again. So he'll be on Rochester. So if it helps you avoid confusion, just simply put him on Rochester, because who cares? He just gets moved over anyway. The only reason why it's useful to have Matt Molson on Ontario is if you play offline non-franchise AHL games, which, if you do, more power to you. I'm not going to lie and say I haven't. I did that more frequently when I actually had an AHL team, which, boy, those were the days where I had an AHL team. Shout out to the Portland Pirates, which, may they rest in pieces. Arg. Amen. Although the ARG really could have replaced the Amen. But I'm excited to get the Maine Mariners as a team. Should be sick. Daniel Vladar for Providence. There's actually another goaltender that is stuck in the ECHL, or at least he might be. He was as of the EA roster update, in which I went through and started editing. So case in point, make sure to double check the ECHL. If there is anybody there of note, again, they will be listed on the Elite Prospects depth chart. The old depth chart. The depthiest of charts. Yes, Alex Nylander's no longer medium elite because, reasons. I didn't even have to look at CJ Smith. Jordan Nolan, Casey Middlestott, medium elite. Perhaps controversial? Maybe. And another reason why I am considering bumping up some of the other prospects from the past draft. Dylan Sakura, only a 74, perhaps controversial. But that is why I'm tempted to bump up the Quentin Hughes and the Bodie Wilds of the world, guys who are projected to be drafted. I mean, but you can look at the draft rankings outside of the top 5. It's a goddamn crapshoot in terms of where players are consistently listed. I just realized I should probably look at Martinson again, go down the right wings, and look at Hina Stroza and John Hayden. John Hayden. I gave Gustafson a pretty good shot, too, solely for the reason that he ripped apart the Bruins. 2 goals the last time they played the Blackhawks. There you go. Good old Jeff Glass. Good old Jeff Glass. And I added Scott Foster to Rockford. He's not under an NHL deal, but for shits and giggles, we added Scott Foster into the game. Of course, as you know, you would have seen him on the created players list. But case in point here, of course, with San Antonio, it'll be the same way on EA's roster, where it's a good mix of Avs prospects, although for the most part, I didn't add that many Blues prospects to this team. I tried to keep them, at least the majority of them, on Chicago, although case in point with Bo Bennett and Soshnikov, that wasn't all of them. Or Sammy Blais. That was not all of them. Klim Kostin's there as well. Kerfoot, Tyson Jost, Rocco Grimaldi. The names. We are almost through the AHL, and that makes me a very happy person. Will this video hit 2 hours? Is my question. How long will this take to upload? How long would it take? You know what I should do? And people were joking about this on Twitch. I really should. I don't know if it's still possible. It was possible on the 360, which is why Peter Puck, again, if you don't know what that is, peterpuck.blogspot.com. They don't really, from at least when I last checked, keep up with the roster updating thing, but they were very influential. They made it so that you could, they just took advantage of the 360, where you could, via a PC program, you could essentially add custom rosters into the game. Via USB, which was amazing, which was absolutely amazing. So for a few years, that's how I handled updating the rosters, is that I would take a look at the Peter Puck site, wait for them to release their first update with a ton of creative players, and then I would download said roster and start my updating from there, which was typically a good way to go. Again, as far as I know, they don't keep us up to date, and that download option isn't a thing anymore. But people got to joking. It's like, man, you should just have, you should just start selling thumb drives with the updated roster. And it's like, that might not be the worst idea. Although, God forbid. Like I said, if someone wants to follow this, more power to you. Even if you just pick and choose the information, you choose to just agree with me and how I've set this up, or maybe you just pick and choose, maybe you change the potentials of some guy, of some players, more power to you. I don't know what I was saying anymore. I should probably sell thumb drives. That's what I was saying. Which, as someone who has found, I got a little bit of entrepreneur in me. Just to have a YouTube channel in the first place. But hell, even back in middle school, I made a killing. Story time with Tougie. Welcome. I made a killing in middle school selling Jolly Ranchers out of my locker. I would buy like a $5 to $10 gigantic bag of Jolly Ranchers, and I would sell them for, I don't know, it was like 10 cents a piece or something like that. Bottom line, I was consistently turning a $10 bag of Jolly Ranchers into like 30 to 40 bucks, depending on how stupid some people wanted to be. Did I charge some assholes a little bit more for certain amounts of candy? Yeah, I did. But it's all about the upsell. It's all about the upsell. I don't know why that story just came to mind. But you know what? Hey, if I can sell candy in middle school and only get detention once for getting caught, then, maybe, just maybe, I could sell thumb drives with an updated roster. Now, again, I will say, right, as clearly shown by what you get for MLB and what you get for Madden, there are some people who, even though it isn't their job, they take it quite seriously, and they put in so much work, and I respect that. And even Peter Puck, back in the day, they used to have like all the goalie equipment updated as well, which is something I try not to worry about, because my God, that's enough time. It's enough time invested as it is. But there are definitely people who put in more work than I do, which again is why I wish roster sharing was a thing. But that is what it is, I suppose. We already kind of touched up on that. It would be nice, because then I know that there are people who would put in even more work than I do, it would make these rosters, just absolutely ridiculous. Which, hey, I don't know. Because I'm just thinking about, what you see on Madden, the OSFM rosters from Operation Sports that you get on MLB The Show. There's some people that put in a tremendous amount of work. And like I said, while this is certainly somewhat of an addiction, it's also fun. Like I said, it makes it more interesting for me to have certain things updated as we get to the final AHL team. We are hitting about the halfway point. Unfortunately, only the halfway point. Thankfully, though, scrolling through SHL, scrolling through Finland, and scrolling through the junior leagues isn't going to be that difficult. And that's just more about people getting to see the potentials for the created guys. But there we go. The NHL is complete. The AHL is complete. So we have the 3 CHL leagues, SHL, and Liga. That is all that remains, basically. Although I think there are a couple of guys, like I mentioned, there are a couple of guys in the National League that I mentioned. Geiser on Washington was one of them. For these leagues, again, the best thing to do is just take a look, as I mentioned, at the team depth charts. Also take a look at who's projected to be drafted in upcoming seasons, and you'll pretty much be able to find exactly who you're looking for. I mean, although I guess I am already kind of scrolling through looking for prospects, despite the fact that I haven't looked for any goaltenders, which I could have sworn, actually, hold on, let me go back to that team, because there were quite a few. Like Lee Roberts is there. Who was, Nando Eggenberger is one of the guys, for sure, who was a little bit overrated by EA, for the record, at least according to early scouting reports. Damian Riot, I can't remember what team he's on. It might be Minnesota, he might be Washington, but that's a name I've seen for years at this point. Geiser was there, Livio Stadler. To be honest, there might not actually be that many guys, aside from Jorn Van Pottelberg, who is a Detroit prospect, who I know is on one of these teams. But you know what? We might as well be thorough. Let's see if we can find him. Muller, Elvis Merzlikins is there. I believe he still has NHL rights with one of the teams, but there you go. Van Pottelberg. Gilles Sen is also a New Jersey prospect. So, case in point, you will find players like this on these teams from time to time. We might as well be thorough. We only have a couple of teams left to check. Shout out to Ludovic Weber. God, what a legend. What a legend. Tell me down in the comments if you're still here, which, by the way, GG if you are. Tell me, in what series was Ludovic Weber a legend? Let me know. The Extraliga, the big name from the Extraliga is going to be Martin Necas, just flat out. Like I said, there might be a couple of other guys. Necas is on Brno, though, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he is. There you go. So, case in point. Same thing, though. You're going to want to do the same exact thing. I'm going to save a little bit of time here. All right. German League, I don't believe there's anybody. Alveskin, though, there are players as well, actually, in the Alveskin. So you're going to want to do the same thing. Of course, the big team is Timrå, although I did move the 2 big prospects for the most part off of Timrå. But you do have other players here like Jacob Olofsson, who I'm pretty sure I added into the game. Now, of course, the one downside is I, might have not shown you the overall or potential for some players that I created. If that's the case and you want to know, just ask me and I'll look it up. For a player in the European leagues, I'll accept that. But if it's like any NHL or AHL teams, no. You're on your own. All right? You're on your own. I can't just load up NHL and be like, okay, people want to see this team, and that team, although I am pretty much looking at fucking everybody here. You get the point, right? You get the point. Use elite prospects, use the upcoming drafted players, use the depth chart, do what you got to do. And I mean, basically all the information you need is right there. It's perhaps the best site on the internet. As we will take a look here. Of course, Miro Heiskanen is there. I'm not seeing anybody else prospect-wise, though, to be honest. Let's take a look. We'll sort it by age each time. Someone like Philip Krivicic, Marcus Niemelainen, an Edmonton prospect. Again, I can't speak as to whether or not any of these guys were like horrifically underrated. I don't believe that to be the case. You know what? Actually, I need to scroll through it this way. I need to scroll through by potential. So let's just do this the long way, so to speak, because there might be certain players that where it's not based off of age that may show up. So we will go through these leagues. You got someone like Lucan in there. Again, you might recognize some of the names. Although, again, for these leagues, like I said, don't worry about the Euro Karainen guys. Like, only typically worry about the players that have already been drafted, have NHL rights, or are in the upcoming draft. It's pretty much all that you can do. As I will quickly scroll through this, only stopping if there's someone of decent potential, like Anthony Honka, who is in the draft a couple of years from now. Good old Anthony Honka. Got Dennis Godla. Nilo Hoivanen wouldn't be a concern, but of course Godla shows up on the free agent list quite often. Who else do we have here? Anybody decent? Luotsurainen, drafted by Carolina. What a beast. And obviously, I wasn't. Ikonen could actually be improved. Decent Montreal prospect. You know what? I will actually just generically improve him right now because he should be better. I forget where the hell I was going with this. With low potentials, particularly low top 6 and low elite, as we really saw in in Draft of Glory. You know, those potentials are solid, especially for some quick developments. Ikonen, if you could please just be a 65, I'd really appreciate it. I'd really appreciate it, buddy. I got shit to do. Thank you. Just make him a 65 at 18 years old. That's not bad. I know he's a pretty highly touted prospect. So he has the low top 6. Let's see, who else do we have here? Didn't even mean to go to forwards. Is there anybody else here with a half-decent potential who is actually a younger player, like Vieti Vaino? A couple of medium 7s there. At the bottom, like I said, there's a whole lot of nothing for the most part that you really don't have to be concerned about. But with having to, I mean, just in general, having players in these leagues that factor into franchise mode, whether or not they're going to be drafted or, you know, have been drafted, or whether or not you're parking these players, like someone like Urho Vakanainen really should be improved from medium top 6 EA. You know, whether or not it's players that are already there, or you parked players on these teams because, you know, you had to, because you couldn't put them on junior teams. You know, you do what you got to do. You do what you got to do. You put in the work, you put in the time, you put in the effort, you feel terrible about yourself, you put on 15 pounds throughout the course of this. Not speaking from a personal standpoint, of course. I would never. I'm in the best shape. That's that was a Trumpism right there too. Not saying I have an opinion. Tougie's getting political a minute and a half into it. Oh, what was it, Kafifi? Is that still a thing anymore? God, that was amazing. I gotta admit, I am catching up on some channels, YouTube-wise. Like my viewership YouTube-wise, typically, I mean, I'm subbed to a lot of people because, my God, there's a lot of talented people out there, but typically what happens is I will eventually fall behind on certain channels where it's just like, okay, I'm going all in on watching this channel right now, and, you know, other channels, my viewership of those channels might suffer. And one of those channels for a decent amount of time was Game Grumps. I fell super far behind. And I'm catching up. And I got to a point where in one of the episodes, they just mentioned that happening. So that was like a year ago. So I'm pretty far behind. But it happens. It does happen. Especially, too, I've noticed, like, I still watch a ton of YouTube. Like, YouTube is my main entertainment consumption. Like, I mean, Twitch-wise, you know, there are people I watch on Twitch. I try to support friends and fellow, I hate the word, content creators and such whenever I can, even if it is just opening up their stream, putting it in a new window. You can't just do the tab and mute thing anymore, apparently. But I'll just drag it into its own window, mute it, and then minimize it, and that works out perfectly. Like, I'll still do that. Totally Spanish. What a guy. yeah, I think you get the point. YouTube's still my my main thing. I mean, TV-wise, still a couple of shows that I'll watch. Still a couple of shows I'll pay attention to. And, of course, sports-wise. But for the most part, it is still pretty straightforward, as the doggo has to leave the room. If you think I'm going to make a jump cut here, you're wrong. So I'm going to walk over here and let the dog out. Go, foul beast. And now we make the long walk back. Am I going to finish this video within 2 hours? I'm thinking that the answer is no. As we get to the real nitty-gritty of this, as you'll see, a lot of these potentials for these prospects. Again, I choose to park most of them in the SHL. So this is the time that you're going to really want to pay attention for those exact player potentials. Like I said, whether or not you just want to decide, okay, well, I had him, Tougie had him at medium top 6, I'm going to make him a low top, or he had him at top 6. I don't know which one, I'm going to make him a low top 6. By all means. By all means. Or look up the player, see where they're projected to be drafted, and fucking go for it. Do what you gotta do. Be your own man. Be a man, as Macho Man Randy Savage once rapped. That's right. The Macho Man rapped, telling Hulk Hogan to be a man. Shout out to the Macho Man. R.I.P. We miss you every day, Mach. Let's see here. So again, I got no choice but to go through this kind of quickly. I know that can be a little bit frustrating to essentially have to needle in a haystack this, to be like, okay, where did Tougie look at Igor Shesterkin? I know that can be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but you gotta cut me some slack here. Where, like, the ETA on this video is 2 hours. You gotta cut me some slack here, right? You just gotta. I mean, could I have, I mean, you can't have asked me to, like, spreadsheet this or anything. It's either you get this or you get nothing. I don't share the info, and yeah, that's just the way it is. So, like I said, put in the work a little bit. It'll be worth it. You'll feel better about yourself as you had to sit here and watch the entire video just to see when did he look at Nikita Trampkin. However, if you were paying attention, what you can do is you can go back to the section where I was on creative players, and you can take a look. As indeed, Tyler Sakura is there. He signed with Chicago for next year, so that's a case in point of giving him Chicago rights and parking him on an SHL team so that they have a year to sign him, which they probably won't, but otherwise they have too many contracts. But if you were paying attention to the creative players part, same thing with Mason Marchment and Toronto. If you were paying attention, you would have seen, okay, when I highlighted Yegor Korshkov, you could have seen the logo in the background, and hopefully you at least have the hockey knowledge to know that that's Linkoping. But especially, too, with me mentioning that it's all SHL teams for the most part that have parked these, players onto, the info's there. Again, you just got to put a little bit of work in. No one said this was easy. You got to pass the test at 75 or lower, and you fail. You need to deliver here. I am counting on you. This is your midterm right now. Your job depends on it. Your retirement and 401k depends on it. I'm trying to be all-encompassing here. What can I say? As we are almost through this, it is only just the 3 CHL leagues to go. And then I can get this video set up. Good thing is it's all one take. There's really no editing. There's no editing whatsoever, actually. And I can just get this video out there, or I can render this video, which however long this will take, and I can sleep for a long time. Because it's early. It's not even early in the morning. It's late morning now, to show you how screwed up my schedule is. But I do it for the people. Not The Rock. Rikishi did it for The Rock. I do it for the people. So, what can I say? As we'll take a look at Urubo, the last team on the list. I'm feeling good. I knew that I would. Yes. There's a Franz in there too. Franz is another one of those guys that we get rid of. So, the timestamps this video makes sense, probably. To the WHL we go, where you will see more added players parked, like David Cotton, Shane Bowers, Stelio Mateos. Well, actually, Stelio's, I'm just used to saying that name. But he is someone we improved. And again, you will notice with these potentials, I'd sort it out every time, but it changes whenever I change the tab, or at least it was before. You'll notice, you know, which guys even that had been bumped up to medium bottom 6 that weren't there before. It all depends on how much work you want to put into it, right? But again, you have these parked created guys, you have other guys that were already here that we bumped up just to make sure that they actually get featured, because EA just doesn't put in the work when it comes to these rosters. They go pretty generic with it, which, hey, it is what it is. That's all I can say. Also, shout out to Jackson Vandaliste being 6'6" at 16 years old. Kid is a monster. An absolute monster. I mean, I got a feeling when he's drafted, it's going to be Logan Stanley-esque, where it's like, okay, if this kid was drafted 15 years ago, my God, he'd be a Hall of Famer. But how does he adapt? You know, how does he translate to today's game? But Jackson Vandaliste, I wish you all the best. Who knows, if it doesn't work out, maybe you can come to the Maine Mariners and be alternate captain behind Chris Rumble, of course. Also, shout out to Boston Blues. Still one of the great names and one of the players that you're going to want to upgrade. Everett, with quite a few parked goaltenders. I'm all nasally. My God. It's all right. We're getting through this. We're making it. And then we're going to celebrate good times. Come on. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do. Woohoo. I'm losing my mind. Oh, I'm losing it. I just lost it. That is a WWF No Mercy reference with the power meter. Shout out to Montana Onyebuchi, who actually has a projected somewhat decent potential now. The Colorado Rockets. What a team. Sandberg, Quentin Hughes, Cal Foote, who, yes, has been dropped from medium elite. I think it was ridiculous. Cole Lynn, though, up to medium top 6. What a guy. Nolan Foote is there as well. Did I add anybody else? That's all right. We have Grant Mishmash. Still one of my favorite names. And also, again, shout out to Jake and Smallwood and Grant Mishmash and Peyton Krebs. Yeah. So, I mean, really, the key here, Caden and Keenan Taphorn. Well, at least you're not a Cademan. Again, the key here, by bumping up a lot of these players, like, will it make the biggest difference in the world making sure that Martin Bodak is a medium 7th? No, but you have the chance of seeing more real players make an impact in franchise mode, even at a 4th and 3rd pairing level, 4th line and 3rd pairing level, than you would have, which to me makes it worth it. Cousins is another guy that you should probably make sure actually has a half-decent potential. But, yeah, I mean, for me, it's worth it because you get to see these guys actually factor in. Josh Williams is another one of those guys. That picture looks like he's 10 years old. You know, you want to make sure that, or at least I care to make sure, that these guys actually factor in, as David Quinville has the best picture in this game. The best. But, yeah, for me, I like to make sure that these guys factor in. I don't like seeing the same guys in every franchise mode. I like doing this and being able to see other guys develop and actually make an impact. No right wings on Moose Jaw, by the way. None at all. Howden, McBain, quite a few guys there. Cody Glass, still medium top 6, which I feel like is pretty fair. Who else do we have? Shout out to Matthew Quigley. The Quigley. And Brendan DeJong. What a guy. Goaltender as well there. We only have about 15,000 teams left to go through. We might somehow, some way, make it under the 2-hour mark. I swear to God, I just thought of this too, and now I'm paranoid. If this somehow, if this doesn't make it to YouTube, right? If you're listening to the sound of my voice right now, then I rested easy. If I like lose power for half a second, if just somehow this video file corrupts, I quit YouTube. I would quit it all. Oh my God, Carson Sass. I should make him franchise level. That is the best name. And you have to say it like Steve Dangle says, class. Carson Sass. And Josh Tarswell as well. There's some great names in the WHL. There really is. Sam Steele. He's a monster. He is. He's a monster. There's some other players here coming up. I'm just not sure where or what league, where it's another good example of a player that you should kind of pay attention to and make sure that you bump up their stats, their attributes, to make sure that they factor in. Kirby Datch is actually a primary example. Now, of course, at a 65, and again, I only think I've seen rare cases of it. It still actually might not be the case where if you add somebody in, like they'll just be drafted. Like I feel like I'm remembering back to my stream earlier where I feel like Bodie Wild was a 65 and he was drafted at a 68. It might not have been Bodie Wild specifically, but I feel like I saw someone actually progress. Case in point, though, it is typically nice to just set the guy to whatever you think they're going to be drafted at. So there are a couple of instances where, you know, you might want to make the overalls a tad bit higher. Nothing too crazy, but Kirby Datch at a 65, case in point here, is one of those players who will absolutely be overshadowed by the computer-generated players. Like, that's just a fact. And unless you make him an 80, odds are he won't go number 1 overall in the draft. It's just the way it is. Shout out to Oliver Wahlstrom. So, you know, you gotta make some creative decisions, we'll say. You gotta take liberties when deciding how you want to set this up exactly and what you think is fair and the whole deal. Sasha Mutawa is actually another one of those guys. I don't know why I said Sasha so awkwardly, but I did. Is it because I'm tired? Is it because I've been talking for almost 2 hours straight? Probably, but hey, I came from the perfect family to be able to sit here and run my mouth for multiple hours. No disrespect, I say that as a compliment. Bowen Byram, another one of those players you're going to want to make better. You know, I come from an Italian family. I come from a very vocal family, so it's perfect. Am I talking with my hands right now? Yeah, actually. I wasn't. I have both hands on the controller just to be able to scroll through this as quickly as I possibly can. But if you watch me on Twitch, I got the talking with hands down. It's a curse. It's a lovely, beautiful curse. But what are you going to do? As we only have 2 more leagues to go through. And then I get to sleep. I get to sleep. Which, again, for the 5 people that actually care and scroll through and be like, okay, I'm going to add this guy and this guy and this guy, just like Tougie added them. God bless you. God bless you. I hope my sacrifice here was worth it. And yes, Ty Dellandrea should only be medium bottom 6, in my opinion, from what I've seen from the scouting reports. Shout out to Dennis Busby. Guelph. With Merkley Iguano. I can't say the word or the name Iguano without thinking of Guano and Ace Ventura. So, fun fact there for you. Just another hashtag Tougie fun fact. Which, you know, out of everything I've said and rambled about in this video, is that the thing I regret the most? Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But that's okay. Shout out to Linus Neiman and his Finnish hairline. No disrespect to any Finns out there, but I mean, come on, that was a pretty stereotypical hairline. Did I say headline? I might have said headline. Maybe he's gonna be a journalist. You don't know. You can't judge. Live your dream, Linus. Your name is Linus. Live your dream. You are. You're a hockey player. It's great. You're doing well. I believe in you and a thing called love. So what could possibly go wrong? Good old Joseph Raymakers. What a guy. You know the song What a Man? Written about Joseph Raymakers. Fun fact. I know. You learn something new every day, and that's the key. Learn something new every day as you got the McLeods, the McLeods, and a Gaylor, and Owen Tippett, who's a 71, and Nicholas Haig. Shout out to Rebuilding Hockeytown. Am I right? I think I'm right. I know I'm right. I'm losing my goddamn mind, but we're almost there. We're almost to the road. We're almost to the road that leads to the road that's at the end of the tunnel. If that makes sense. It didn't, but that's okay. I'm rolling with it. I am. I'm rolling with it. Brandon Coe. Not one of those players, by the way. North Bay Battalion. Not sure if you noticed. Not that great. Not that great in this game. Even with added help. Not good. Not good. Did he know Antropov? Another player worth bumping up an overall a little bit there. Shout out to Nicholas Wong. What else do we got here? Shaw Boomhauer as well. The legend. Follow Shaw Boomhauer on Twitter. Like, he follows me for whatever reason. That is my claim to fame. You think I care about whoever else follows me? Hell no. Shaw Boomhauer follows me on Twitter. That is the accomplishment. That is the victory. That is all you need as an NHL YouTuber and streamer. It's just if you have Shaw Boomhauer's approval, you got it made. You got it made. Shout out to Alan Shout out to Alan Polish. So many shout outs, but you know what? People deserve their recognition. They deserve their credit. They deserve their moment in the sun. There are certain people who don't often get noticed, and they deserve to be recognized. I need to think of a new rant and ramble to go on, because I got nothing. I am running out of steam at an alarming rate, but that's okay. We'll make it through this. You and me, and nobody else together. We'll make it through this. I promise. That guy's name is Guy. Braden Guy. What a guy. I couldn't help it. I'm sorry. I disappointed you. I know. This guy's name is Coffin. Blair Coffin. Oh, you won't bury the puck past him. Da, 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 da. I'm the worst. Anyway, we got Wale as well. Didn't know he played hockey. Now I do. Again, you learn. Sometimes you learn more than a couple of things new every day. Barrett Hayton, in all honesty, could probably be improved a little bit, particularly his puck handling skills. Kid's a beast. You saw the highlight reel goals. Now, highlight reel goals, of course, don't translate to this kid's going to have a successful NHL career. It's also weird to me to call someone a kid, but, you know, I guess I am now technically. I mean, when would you define mid-20s? Mid-20s. When would you define mid-20s? Does it start at 25 or does it begin at 24? Like, is early 20s 20 to 23 or is 24 still in there? I need to know for a friend who feels like he's getting old as shit. Because you have players that, you know, are being drafted that look older than you do, and it's weird. And there are some of these guys in these junior leagues that it's like, okay, that kid is 35 years old and has been since he was 8. Come on now. Antoine Morant, not a case of one of those players, but that's okay. We'll find one of those players, maybe, as we go through the queue. The queue, as they call it. Any other major names here? I'm not sure. I guess it doesn't really matter, but these are. I mean, think about it. We've hit the home stretch. Here we are. We have officially arrived. Batherson reminds me of Nasher. Again, like, distant relative, maybe. It's weird. It's weird. See, case in point. You look like you're at least 28 years old. It's weird. It is. I don't know what else to say. As we get a look at the Mandalisi. Tremendous name. Yeah, we are here. This is the home stretch. This is our time to shine. I have 10 minutes to go, roughly, before we hit the 2-hour mark. How have I been talking for the past 2 hours without my voice just giving out? I don't know. It's a gift, apparently. Apparently it's also a curse. That guy's name was amazing. I'm not even going to repeat it. You should rewind the video to get back to it. Farmer and Kotkov. Who there? Who there? Who? Joe Valeno. No longer medium elite. Still a 73. You could argue he should be dropped a little bit, but hey, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Bastian Eckel. Amazing name. Goaltender. Oliver Rodriguez, who is one of the better goalies. It's not a great draft for goaltenders on paper, as you will learn if you look things up. There's not a whole lot of top-notch goalie talent, at least in the projections. Xavier Perrant is another guy that you're going to want to add into the game. Benoit Garou. Philip Zadina, of course, still kicking it on Halifax. McIsaac, Justin Barron. So see, like I said, EA have added in a lot of these guys. You know, a lot of 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are going to be drafted in the next few years, but they make them at such low potentials that they just do not factor in to franchise mode whatsoever. And that is one of the main things that we changed in terms of going through every single one of these teams. Poor Andrew Coxhead, by the way. Like, I'm sure. Like, being a hockey player helps. Probably a popular kid at school. I mean, what's his nickname in the locker room, right? It's got to be Coxie. It has to be. Or maybe it's Dickhead if people really don't like him. Who knows? I'm just saying, that's an unfortunate surname, but I hope he carries it with pride. I do. Rise above the hate. And we got Lafreniere at a 67, medium elite, at 15 years old, by the way. And Samuel Dove McFalls. Great flow. Great flow. Now, you might notice at the queue there aren't as many parked creative players here. There's also not a crap ton of players that needed to be bumped up. The queue is, it's still a league with talent. However, also Hungerbuehler. Hungerbuehler. Unreal. Again, I told you, some of the names. Some of the names. Oh, stop. And Cedric Paré. Bruins draft pick. And who could forget the legend, Nick Deacon Poot. How you end up with the surname of Deacon Poot, I do not know. But I do believe it to be one of man's great accomplishments. So Nick Deacon Poot, I salute you. As we make it to the former Louis the Maniacs. Brendan Cragen needs some sleep. Just going to go out on a limb and make that statement. He could use some sleep. Also, Jackson, Jaxon, really? And Bailey Peach. What a name. Samuel Poulin, another guy you're going to want to make sure is half decent. Bailey Peach, squeaky chair. Make an impact. Make an impact, squeaky chair. There it is. There's the arm. It's the arms that really get you. We just do that slow lean. There it is. You just do the slow lean forward, and this chair is like, hey, let's make some funny noises. Let's do it. Let's make some funny noises. Who else do we got? The Victoriaville Tigres and the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Smith. What a guy. Forever a legend. Ivan Kosarenkov, Abramov, Comtois. And that does it. I don't have the strength or the energy or the voice at this point to really say anything else. So let's just cut right to the outro. If you have any questions, any requests, whatever else, any feedback, whatever, you know the deal. I'll be down in the comment section answering questions when and where I can. But I've pointed out the steps. I've scrolled through basically every team to show you guys, in most cases, at the very least, the overalls and the potentials, and in the case of the NHL and AHL players, their attributes as well. We've created numerous players. We've done it all. And we will be putting this new roster to the test in franchise mode very, very soon. I love you all. Goodbye for now.